The galaxy demanded 1,000 human sacrifices. Not for war. Not for rebellion. Just to keep the paperwork balanced. The demand arrived without sirens, without fleets, and without threats. No invasion alarms rang on Earth. No guns powered up in orbit. There was only a transmission. 17 pages long. Stamped, translated into 6,000 recognized legal dialects, notarized by 3 independent galactic authorities, and approved unanimously by the concordance of sentient powers. The title alone took most humans a moment to process. Stabilization Levy, Species of Recent Admission. It was polite, clinical, and absolutely lethal. Page 3 contained the number 1,000 sentient lives of human origin, to be surrendered within 1 standard cycle, delivered to a neutral processing site, permanently removed from all civil, genetic, and historical registries. No names required. No ages specified. No justification needed. The galaxy called it a stabilizing tribute. They had precedent, after all. Civilizations that joined the concordance late, too numerous, too unpredictable, too volatile, were often required to balance their impact. A ritualized reduction. A symbolic cost of entry. Most species complied quietly. Those that didn't simply stopped existing. Refusal wasn't rebellion. Refusal wasn't defiance. Refusal meant extinction by paperwork. On Earth, the transmission reached every major government within minutes. Emergency councils convened. Advisors shouted. Screens filled with cascading legal language written in alien logic and colder math. 1,000. It sounded small to some, a rounding error to others. But no one asked who would be chosen, because everyone already knew the answer. The poor, the displaced, the politically invisible. Sacrifice never took volunteers. It took convenience. The concordance expected protests. They expected outrage. They expected fear. What they did not expect was silence. For 72 hours, humanity issued no reply. No speeches. No condemnations. No threats. Galactic media began speculating immediately. Are humans divided? Are they negotiating among themselves? Which regions will be exempt? Some analysts assumed Earth would comply, like all the others had. Reluctantly. Tragically. But efficiently. Others predicted chaos. Civil unrest. Maybe even a civil war over who deserved to live. Inside the Terran Assembly Hall, the atmosphere was nothing like the galaxy imagined. There were no shouting matches. No panic. Only screens. Documents. And people reading. The legal teams arrived first. Then the archivists. Then historians. Then ethicists who had spent their entire careers arguing over footnotes no one thought would ever matter. And finally, the lawyers. Hundreds of them. They didn't speak at first. They didn't argue. They read. They read the levy. They read the annexes. They read the appendices referenced by clauses buried in translated subsections. They read the concordance charter. They read the enforcement protocols. They read the definitions. Especially the definitions. Because humans had learned something long before they ever reached the stars. Power didn't always come from weapons. Sometimes, it came from language. On the 4th day, a junior legal analyst, barely out of her residency, raised a quiet hand. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Article 12, she said. Subsection C. The levy applies only to recognized contributing members of a species. The room stilled. Someone asked her to continue. She swallowed. According to the Concordance's own definitions, individual humans are not recognized contributors unless they are registered within an interstellar labor, military, or research framework. The implication took a moment to land. Then someone laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was possible. Screens shifted. Pages turned faster. Cross-references lit up across the room. Another lawyer spoke up. The levy requires sentient lives of human origin, he said carefully. But it never states they must be unwilling. A third added quietly. and it never defines sacrifice as death. The silence that followed was different now. It wasn't fear. It was focused. Across the galaxy, the Concordants waited confidently. They had issued their demand. They had history on their side. Earth would respond soon enough. And when it did, the galaxy was certain it would be begging. They were wrong. Very wrong. Because humanity wasn't choosing who would die. Humanity was choosing how the law would break. And when Earth finally prepared its reply, the message was short, polite, and devastating. It began with a single sentence. "We accept your terms." And ended with another. "Our representatives will arrive shortly." Not soldiers. Not sacrifices. Lawyers. The Concordants believed it had demanded blood. It would soon learn it had summoned something far more dangerous. The arrival. The Concordance Tribunal had seen every form of submission imaginable. Crying delegations. Threats disguised as speeches. Entire species kneeling on holographic floors, offering prayers to powers that had already signed their extinction warrants. So when Earth's response arrived, it barely registered as unusual. "We accept your terms." That was expected. What followed was not. 3 standard cycles later, the tribunal received notice of arrival. Not one vessel. Not a fleet. 9 ships. Unarmed. Unshielded. Broadcasting civilian transponder codes and diplomatic clearance requests in perfect concordance legal syntax. The docking manifests caused mild confusion. No cryovaults. No containment pods. No sacrificial transport chambers. Instead, the ships listed conference halls, archive cores, mobile data libraries, and personnel. So many personnel. The tribunal observers leaned closer as the numbers updated. 312 accredited legal representatives. 67 translators. 21 historians. 9 ethicists. 14 archivists. 0 prisoners. 0 sacrifices. The chief arbiter, a 6-limbed Keth observer named Zaltuun, flicked its attention spines in irritation. "Query," it rasped. "Where are the human lives designated for levy fulfillment?" The reply came instantly. Measured. Human. They're with us. That answer rippled through the chamber. When the docking clamps sealed and the airlocks opened, the galaxy's expectations finally collapsed. The humans did not shuffle in chains. They did not avert their eyes. They did not kneel. They walked, professionally dressed, carrying data slates, physical folders, and something several observers found deeply unsettling: confidence. The lead human stepped forward. Older, gray-haired, expression neutral to the point of boredom. She bowed, not submissively, but precisely. "Chief Arbiter Zaltuun," she said. "I am Elena Marrow, Senior Counsel for the United Terran Assembly." She gestured behind her. "We are here to complete the stabilization levy." Murmurs spread across the chamber. Zaltuun's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "You have delivered no sacrifices." Elena smiled. "A small one. A professional one." "We disagree." She tapped her slate, and the chamber displays ignited. Clause trees. Highlighted text. Cross-referenced concordance rulings stretching back thousands of cycles. "You requested 1,000 sentient lives of human origin," she said. "Correct." Zaltuun nodded. "You did not specify termination," Elena continued. "You specified removal from civil registries." A pause. She advanced the display. "Today, 1,000 human legal professionals have formally renounced all planetary citizenship, all sovereign protections, and all civil identity under Terran law." The room erupted. Objections flashed. Judges vocalized in 3 separate frequency bands. Zaltuun slammed its limb against the dais. "Clarify," it demanded. Elena didn't raise her voice. "These individuals are no longer recognized as human citizens," she said. "They are no longer registered under Terran civil authority." She paused. "By your own definitions, they are no longer counted." The tribunal systems struggled to reconcile the data. Registry removal confirmed. Citizenship voided. Legal identity severed. A concordance jurist leaned forward. You offer voluntary legal erasure in place of death? Elena nodded. And more. She swiped again. Each of these individuals has been notarized, recorded, and delivered into concordance jurisdiction, permanently removed from human registries. She met Zaltuun's gaze. 1,000 sentient lives, of human origin, removed. Silence spread like a vacuum. No precedent flagged. No violation detected. The concordance had never imagined a species willing to sacrifice status instead of lives. Zaltuun shifted uneasily. You will die without citizenship, it said. Elena shrugged. Eventually, she replied. Like everyone else. That was when the second realization struck the tribunal. A soft one. A dangerous one. These humans were not afraid. Because they weren't finished. Elena's smile returned, this time sharper. Now, she said, we'd like to discuss compensation. The chamber froze. Compensation. Zaltuun repeated. Yes, Elena said pleasantly. Article 15, subsection D. Species fulfilling a stabilization levy are entitled to developmental consideration, proportional to contribution. She gestured to the 1,000 humans standing behind her. By concordance standards, these individuals now belong to you. A beat. Which makes their labor negotiable. The implications hit like a kinetic strike. The concordance hadn't received sacrifices. It had accidentally acquired 1,000 experts in law, ethics, diplomacy, and governance, unbound by human political constraints and fully fluent in alien legal systems. 1,000 minds. Inside their system. Zaltuun's voice dropped. You weaponize compliance. Elena inclined her head. You incentivized it. Across the galaxy, observers began to panic. Because if humanity could do this once, they could do it again. And next time, it wouldn't be lawyers. The chief arbiter realized, far too late, that the levy had been fulfilled. Legally, irrevocably, and catastrophically. Because the humans hadn't come to die. They had come to stay. The concordance thought it had claimed 1,000 lives. It had just imported 1,000 problems. The loophole spreads. The concordance did not announce what had happened. That was the first mistake. There was no emergency broadcast. No clarification memo. No attempt to explain why 1,000 humans now existed inside concordance space without citizenship, without sovereign oversight, and without expiration clauses. The tribunal adjourned in silence. And silence, in a galaxy built on precedent, was louder than any alarm. Within hours, independent observers began to notice anomalies. Legal databases updated. Registry counts shifted. Human identifiers appeared in concordance labor indices, flagged not as prisoners, but as assets. Archivists whispered. Trade envoys paused negotiations mid-sentence. By the end of the first cycle, every major power had reached the same terrifying conclusion. Humanity had complied. And somehow, won. The first species to test the implications were the Yalari. Avian. Fragile. Brilliant engineers with wings too delicate for war. They had been assessed for a stabilization levy decades earlier. Their numbers were high. Their territory inconvenient. Their extinction scheduled. The Yalari delegation arrived at Concordance Central 3 days after the humans. They did not beg. They arrived with contracts. Their lead representative, feathers dull with age, stood before the same dais where Elena Merrow had spoken. We request clarification, the Yalari said softly, on the definition of sacrifice. The chief arbiter felt something dangerously close to dread. Across the chamber, humans watched. Not interfering. Not advising. Just observing. The Yalari continued. If removal from registry constitutes fulfillment, then we offer volunteers. 100 Yalari engineers stepped forward. They renounced citizenship. They surrendered sovereign protection. They transferred legal identity. In exchange, they demanded something unprecedented. Time. Time to migrate their children. Time to dismantle cities instead of abandoning them. Time to live. The concordance systems processed the request and approved it. The chamber erupted. Within days, the pattern repeated. The Celt offered scientists. The Neru sent linguists. The Polari surrendered philosophers, an act once considered unthinkable. Species after species realized the truth. The levy didn't require death. It required loss. And humans had proven there were things worse to give up than life. The galaxy's power structure began to warp. Sacrifice worlds became negotiation tables. Extinction events turned into labor exchanges. And at the center of it all, the humans remained. The 1,000 lawyers did not return home. They embedded. They advised concordance committees. They audited enforcement mechanisms. They quietly corrected translations that had always been that way. Entire subsections of galactic law began to shift. Not rewritten. Interpreted. And interpretation was where humans thrived. A concordance economic analyst finally voiced what others feared. These humans, it said, they are creating a market. It was right. Sacrifice had always been a blunt instrument. Humans had turned it into leverage. Soon, even dominant empires began to feel pressure. Because smaller species were no longer disappearing. They were staying. Protected by technicalities. Shielded by precedent. And every precedent cited, traced back to the humans. The Concordance issued a confidential advisory. The stabilization levy is under review. Too late. The advisory leaked. That was the second mistake. Across the galaxy, oppressed populations saw something they had never seen before. A path that didn't require rebellion. A survival method that didn't involve fleets. Just paperwork. On Earth, the Terran Assembly watched quietly. They did not celebrate. They prepared. Because humanity knew something the Concordance still didn't understand. Loopholes attract attention. And attention attracts force. The first threat arrived disguised as diplomacy. A priority transmission from the Koroth Imperium. Ancient. Militarized. Unaccustomed to being outmaneuvered by newcomers. Their message was short. Human legal entities operating within concordant space are destabilizing galactic order. The reply from Earth was even shorter. They are complying. The Koroth did not like that answer. They began mobilizing fleets. Officially for security exercises. Unofficially, to remind the galaxy how power used to work. Inside Concordance Central, the Chief Arbiter convened an emergency session. Zaltoon's voice carried an edge it had never used before. The humans exploited a flaw, it said. They must be corrected. A junior adjudicator asked the question no one wanted to hear. How? Silence. Because the humans hadn't broken the law. They had followed it. Perfectly. And now, hundreds of species were doing the same. To reverse the precedent would invalidate centuries of rulings. To enforce it selectively would expose the Concordance as a lie. The Chief Arbiter finally spoke the truth. We did not demand blood, Zaltoon said. We demanded obedience. The humans had given them compliance. And stripped them of control. Far across the chamber, Elena Marrow watched the proceedings through a secure feed. She didn't smile. She simply turned to her team and said, "They're going to try force." A pause. "Prepare the defense. Not soldiers. Not fleets. Briefs." When the law failed to stop humanity, the galaxy reached for weapons. When empires panic. The Concordance had always been a quiet, unseen hand. Its influence spanned hundreds of star systems, manipulating the threads of diplomacy, economics, and occasionally, history itself. Empires rose and fell not with armies, but with subtle nudges, with regulations and edicts whispered through bureaucratic veins. And yet, for the first time in a millennium, the Concordance panicked. Panic was not a word you associated with a governing body that could, if it wished, rewrite reality itself. But humanity had forced its hand. In the span of a single solar cycle, humans had become something the Concordance could neither categorize nor control. Their ingenuity, their audacity, The sheer unpredictability of their actions. It defied the logic that had governed interstellar civilization for millennia. At the council chambers on Luminaris Prime, the High Curators argued in harsh whispers. Every seat was occupied by a hologram representing the major empires, their spectral forms flickering as if reality itself struggled to maintain their presence. "They've weaponized the abyssal bloom," said Curator the Lion, his voice taut with incredulity. "A plague designed to end life, and they've turned it into commerce. Into profit. Into leverage." "Leverage?" hissed Curator Virek. "Do you not understand what this means? Humanity can bend our weapons back against us. They can take our own creations and turn them into bargaining chips. They are an uncontrolled variable." "Uncontrolled?" a younger curator objected, his voice trembling through the chamber. "They are dangerous. They are reckless. They are human," the Lion cut in sharply. "And that is precisely the problem. We have always calculated probability. We have always predicted outcome. But humans are chaos vectors in the purest sense. Their unpredictability is not a bug. It is an evolutionary advantage." Outside the chambers, in the realigned sectors, the Concordance's field agents moved with purpose. They were instructed to observe, to infiltrate, to manipulate, and if necessary, to suppress. And yet, for every plan drafted, every reality-edited contingency, humanity was already one step ahead. On Earth, the Human Council had begun a quiet operation that no one beyond their planetary orbit would suspect. They called it the Codex Initiative. Its goal was simple in theory: acquire every piece of alien technology humanity could access, reverse engineer it, and predict, not just react to, the Concordance's moves. In practice, it was far more audacious. A small strike team of human scientists and tacticians assembled at a hidden orbital station above the Martian colonies. Their leader, Admiral Kayla Rios, stared at the holographic map of the Orion cluster. Each dot represented a Concordance installation, each line a communication relay. "They think they can corner us," she said quietly. "They think that rewriting a few laws of physics, erasing a few inconvenient probabilities, will stop us. But reality isn't theirs. Not anymore. It belongs to the species that can adapt." Her team nodded, a mixture of exhaustion and determination painted on their faces. For decades, humanity had been underestimated, overlooked, dismissed as a minor player in galactic politics. And now, that oversight was the Concordance's greatest vulnerability. Meanwhile, across the cluster, the High Curators began issuing contingency edicts. A fleet would be sent to the outer colonies. Surveillance drones would monitor human activity in real time. Entire sectors would be quarantined to prevent further contamination. The Curator's language was careful, but the intent was clear: eliminate uncertainty before it could spread. But humans did not act like other species. Where the Concordance saw a threat to be contained, humans saw opportunity. Every quarantine became a test. Every surveillance measure became a puzzle. Every fleet sent to intimidate was met with countermeasures that were almost elegant in their simplicity. On the diplomatic front, human emissaries began making offers that no other species could imagine. Plagues became vaccines. Weapons became trade commodities. Every attempt at control became a transaction. The Concordance had never faced a civilization that could turn fear into profit, chaos into commerce, and hostility into leverage. And yet, the Curators persisted. They argued over whether humanity should be catalogued, isolated, or destroyed. They debated rewriting the temporal directives to erase the species from existence before it could rise. But even in their panic, the Concordance was cautious. Reality was delicate. Any misstep could ripple across timelines, creating paradoxes the Curators themselves could not repair. Humanity, as always, continued to move forward, unaware of just how close they were to being erased from possibility itself. And that, perhaps, was their greatest weapon of all. In the council chambers, the debate reached its crescendo. Some argued for direct intervention. Some argued for diplomacy. And a few, the oldest among the Curators, whispered about rewriting fundamental laws, not of physics, but of probability itself, to make humans compliant. It was a dangerous idea. It was reckless. It was exactly the sort of thinking that humans thrived upon. Outside Luminaris Prime, Stars twinkled as if indifferent. But behind their light, across countless parsecs, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. Empires panicked, fleets mobilized, and human minds, bright, unpredictable, audacious, waited for the moment to strike. Because when empires panic, opportunity follows. And humans had learned to see opportunity where others saw annihilation. And as the Concordance prepared its ultimate gambit to rewrite reality itself, humanity began the first of many counter-operations, moves so daring, so unpredictable, that even the curators could not calculate the odds. The counter-gambit. Humanity had learned early that when the universe moved against you, hesitation was a luxury you could not afford. While the Concordance debated, panicked, and drafted reality-altering edicts, humans had already begun their first counter-gambit, a plan that relied not on brute force, but on audacity and unpredictability. The operation was code-named Eclipse Protocol, and it was designed to turn the Concordance's own powers against them. For centuries, the curators had believed they could manipulate probability, erase inconvenient events from history, and rewrite reality itself. Humans had discovered, through meticulous observation and bold experimentation, that these laws of manipulation had limits, and that those limits could be exploited. Aboard the orbital station Haven 9, Admiral Kayla Rios oversaw the final preparations. A holographic display of the Orion cluster hovered above the command table, each star system and fleet position meticulously charted. But what caught her attention was not the location of Concordance forces, it was their predictability. "They think in grids and probabilities," Kayla said to her tactical officers. "They calculate outcomes in neat, linear equations. But humans are not linear. We are not neat. And that is our advantage. Every move they make, we can bend it. Every attempt to corner us only shows us where the cracks are." The team nodded. Months of reverse engineering alien technology had brought them here. The Concordance's probability engines, their reality mapping tools, had all been hacked, studied, and understood, not to control humans, but to anticipate the curators' moves before they even conceived them. The first phase of Eclipse Protocol involved disinformation at a galactic scale. Using hijacked communication satellites and encrypted subspace relays, humans fed the Concordance fleet's contradictory intelligence. Fleets appearing where none existed, colonies supposedly under quarantine that were fully operational, weapon caches that shifted coordinates at every transmission. It was chaos by design. Every curator knew that reality was being rewritten around them, yet they could not distinguish truth from fabrication. Fleet commanders hesitated. Surveillance operators second-guessed their own readings. Probability analysts were forced to rerun simulations every microsecond, only to find their calculations collapsing under the weight of human ingenuity. Phase 2 was audacious in its simplicity. Humans began trading the abyssal bloom as a commodity, not as a weapon, but as leverage. Each shipment contained microscopic adjustments that made the pathogen useful for alien medicine, alien industry, and alien commerce, but never harmful to humans. Concordance officials, desperate to control the pandemic, were forced to negotiate. Humanity was not asking for territory, or colonies, or submission, they were asking for acknowledgement, respect for unpredictability, for autonomy, for survival. "Every contract we make," Kayla explained to her officers, "every transaction, every deal, it's a mirror. They see us, but only in ways they understand. They never see what we're truly doing behind the curtain." And while the Concordance struggled to comprehend the magnitude of human audacity, the final phase of the protocol unfolded, Operation Echo. Using the knowledge gained from hacked reality mapping devices, human tacticians began small manipulations in critical systems. Power grids, orbital docks, fuel depots, everything was subtly reprogrammed to create cascading disruptions in Concordance logistics. Each minor disruption, taken individually, seemed negligible. But together, they formed a network of impossible events, forcing fleets to reroute, communication channels to fail, and entire fleets to operate in a near-constant state of confusion. On Luminaris Prime, the curators watched in disbelief. How is this possible?" whispered Curator Vyrek, watching holographic feeds of misaligned fleets, delayed reinforcements, and collapsed supply chains. "We account for every variable, every probability, every potential reality. And yet, the Lion finished grimly, humans move like shadows through uncertainty. They exploit the gaps we cannot see. They thrive in the chaos we fear." By the end of the first cycle, entire fleets were immobilized, critical supply nodes compromised, and diplomatic channels saturated with human disinformation. And still, humanity advanced, not with overwhelming firepower, but with audacity, foresight, and the uncanny ability to anticipate the Concordance's every move. Even the most conservative curators began whispering of reality itself bending around humans. "It is not manipulation," one observed quietly. "It is adaptation. They do not obey probability, they redefine it." Back on Haven 9, Admiral Kayla allowed herself a rare moment of quiet. The stars outside the observation dome twinkled in unyielding indifference. Yet in that vast darkness, humans had carved a foothold, a proof that even against a force capable of rewriting existence, creativity, audacity, and adaptability could prevail. And as she turned back to her tactical display, Kayla smiled. The Concordance had brought the galaxy's most sophisticated reality engines against her species, and they had only highlighted the one truth humans had always known: the universe belongs to those who act, not to those who calculate. But the Concordance would not remain idle. Panic had only fueled human ingenuity, and now the curators were preparing a gambit unlike any in recorded history, a move to collapse the very timeline in which humans existed. Humanity would face its first true test, a war against reality itself. The timeline gambit. The Concordance was no longer content with observation, disinformation, or conventional force. Humanity had proven too clever, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be contained by fleets or quarantine zones. The curators convened in their shadowed chambers, speaking now in tones that carried across time itself. "We cannot wait any longer," said High Curator the Lion, his voice trembling, not with fear, but with the weight of inevitability. "Humans have turned our own tools against us. Our fleets are immobilized, our projections fail at every turn. If we continue like this, they will outmaneuver us in every sector of the galaxy." "Then we collapse the timeline," whispered Vyrek. The words hung in the chamber like a blade. "We do not act in reality. We act upon reality. We erase the inconvenient variables. We prevent their rise at the source. We fold the timeline itself so that humans never existed." The idea was staggering, audacious, and terrifying even by concordant standards. Reality rewriting had always been theoretical. Adjusting minor probabilities, nudging histories, collapsing singular events, these were their usual tools. But erasing an entire species, along every timeline and every alternate reality? That was nothing short of absolute power. And even among the curators, few had dared contemplate it. Meanwhile, humanity remained oblivious to the magnitude of the threat, yet poised to face it. Admiral Kayla Rios studied the data streams pouring in from Haven 9's observation grid. Something was different. Patterns that should have been stable were flickering, probabilities fluctuating unpredictably. Even the reality mapping devices humans had commandeered were reporting inconsistencies beyond anything previously observed. "They're doing it," she said quietly. "They're trying to rewrite us out of existence." Her officers paled, understanding for the first time that this was no longer a tactical engagement, no longer a contest of fleets or technology. This was a battle for existence itself. Kayla convened a council of human scientists, engineers, and strategists. "We've faced plagues designed to annihilate us. We've turned entire fleets against themselves with nothing but audacity. But now, they're attacking the very fabric of reality. We have to fight differently. Not with ships. Not with weapons. With the only thing they cannot rewrite: ingenuity." The human solution, eventually codenamed Project Continuum, was radical. If the curators sought to erase humans from time, then humans would anchor themselves in self-reinforcing loops of probability. Every significant human achievement, every critical innovation, would be encoded in multiple timelines, each feeding into the other. By creating self-sustaining causal loops, humans ensured that even if a timeline was altered, another would persist to restore what had been erased. It was audacious, dangerous, and theoretically miraculous, a human solution to a problem that transcended physics itself. Across the galaxy, the Concordance initiated its gambit. Reality engines roared to life in the hidden chambers of Luminaris Prime. Time folded and flexed as the curators attempted to excise humans from existence. Entire colonies blinked out of history, only to reappear in alternate sectors. Recorded histories of humanity vanished from archives, only to be reconstructed from the memories of those left behind in surviving timelines. And through it all, humans acted as if nothing had changed. Not out of ignorance, but out of preparation. The self-reinforcing loops held. Probabilities adjusted, corrected, and adapted in real time. Even the most sophisticated reality engines faltered, unable to anticipate a species capable of thinking outside the bounds of causality itself. In the chambers of the curators, panic turned to disbelief. "Impossible," Virek gasped. "We are collapsing timelines. We are erasing history. And yet, they endure. Every measure we take, every reality we alter, they exist." "They are not constrained by your logic," the lion said grimly. "They do not obey the rules we wrote for the cosmos. And now, they are learning to use your tools against you." As the battle between timelines raged, humans launched targeted countermeasures. Using predictive algorithms and deep temporal analysis, they identified the nodes where the curator's reality rewriting was weakest. At these points, they reinforced events, seeded crucial inventions, and ensured key individuals survived, humans and allies alike. Every act of ingenuity became a temporal anchor, a defiance of cosmic manipulation. The paradoxes began to collapse on the curators themselves. Fleets that had been erased reappeared in unexpected sectors. Missions vanished mid-course, only to resume with subtle differences. Reality itself began to ripple unpredictably under the strain of human resistance. And the curators realized, perhaps too late, that humans were not fighting for territory, or resources, or even survival alone. They were fighting to exist as a species that refused to be controlled. Back on Haven 9, Kayla observed the temporal fluctuations through layers of reinforced sensors. She allowed herself a rare, quiet smile. They thought erasing us would be simple. They thought reality itself would obey their will. They underestimated us, as they always do. Humanity had survived fleets, plagues, and propaganda. Now, they faced the greatest threat in the history of the galaxy, a war against existence itself. And in true human fashion, they adapted, improvised, and prepared to turn even this cosmic gambit into an opportunity. The Concordance had initiated the timeline gambit, but humans were not merely surviving, they were learning to fight within time itself. And soon, they would strike at the very heart of the curator's power, challenging the notion that any being could truly control the universe. Striking the heart. Humanity had survived fleets, plagues, and attempts to erase them from time itself. But survival alone was not enough. Humans did not merely endure, they struck back, turning threats into opportunities, chaos into leverage, and now they were preparing to strike at the very heart of the Concordance. Admiral Kayla Rios convened the Command Council aboard Haven 9, the orbital station orbiting the newly colonized moon of Asteris Beta. Every officer, scientist, and strategist present understood the stakes. The Concordance's central nexus, the core of Luminaris, was not just a seat of power. It was the control hub for the reality engines, the devices capable of manipulating timelines and probabilities across the galaxy. Destroy or neutralize the core, and the curator's influence would crumble. "Every fleet they send will be a trap," Kayla said, her voice steady, yet filled with unyielding resolve. "Every communication will be monitored. Every move predicted. But there is one thing they cannot calculate." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Human ingenuity. And we will strike where they least expect it." The plan, codename Heartfire, was audacious in scope. Rather than attacking head-on, the human forces would employ a series of coordinated diversions. Phantom fleets, falsified communications, and deliberately leaked intelligence designed to mislead the Concordance into dispersing their defenses. While the curators debated which threat was real, humanity's stealth teams would infiltrate the core's defenses using the very infrastructure built to predict human behavior. On the surface of Luminaris Prime, hidden among the gleaming towers of the curator's capital, a team of human operatives prepared for insertion. Their mission was surgical: plant temporal stabilizers, disrupt the reality engines, and create a feedback loop that would render the curator's timeline manipulations ineffective. Failure was unthinkable, but humans thrived where others would falter, embracing risk as the catalyst for victory. Back in orbit, Admiral Kayla oversaw the deployment of decoy fleets. Each ship emitted signatures calculated to mimic a large-scale human assault. Every sensor reading fed back into the curator's monitoring systems, convincing them that the primary threat lay elsewhere. The Concordance responded exactly as expected. Defensive fleets dispersed, reality engines shifted focus, and key nodes were left vulnerable. Meanwhile, on the surface, human operatives moved like shadows through corridors lined with reality-stabilizing fields. Each step was precise, each action calculated to avoid detection. Yet even as they worked, the temporal fluctuations caused by the curator's desperation made the environment unpredictable. Walls seemed to shimmer, corridors appeared and disappeared, and time itself occasionally skipped. But the operatives adapted, relying on intuition, training, and improvisation, the hallmarks of humanity's unique resilience. In the core chamber, the central reality engine pulsed with cosmic energy. Holographic streams of probability and time twisted around its core like a living storm. The curators monitored every fluctuation, every potential timeline, but even they could not predict what was coming. The humans were not there to fight. They were there to rewrite the rules. With precision, the team activated the temporal stabilizers, embedding human causality loops into the engine's calculations. The feedback was immediate. Probability equations began to collapse, projected outcomes became unstable, and the once unassailable reality engine flickered. High Curator the Lion, observing remotely, realized too late what was happening. "Impossible," he muttered. They are turning our own system against us." "How?" Kayla's voice came through the secure comm link, calm and commanding. "You underestimated us. Again. You tried to erase humanity from existence, and we adapted. You cannot control what you cannot predict. You cannot rewrite what you cannot define. We are human, and this is our world." Across the galaxy, fleets once immobilized by the timeline gambit now surged forward, striking at scattered Concordance outposts and supply lines. The human offensive was not just tactical, it was symbolic. Every action demonstrated a truth the curators could not deny. Humans could adapt, overcome, and dominate in the face of impossibility. Within hours, the core's reality engines faltered completely. The curators' carefully constructed timelines unraveled, paradoxes cascading through their control networks. Fleets blinked in and out of existence, colonies were freed from temporal oversight, and communications stabilized, allowing for human coordination. The Concordance, for all its centuries of dominance, faced a species that could not be calculated, could not be contained, and would not bow. Humanity had struck the heart, not with overwhelming force, but with audacity, ingenuity, and the unparalleled ability to turn even the universe's rules into tools for survival. Kayla watched the stabilization reports, a rare smile on her face. Humanity had survived fleets, plagues, and time itself. Now, they had reshaped the battlefield. The Concordance could no longer manipulate them with certainty, no longer predict their moves, and no longer impose its will upon a species that refused to submit. And across the stars, a new truth became evident. Humans were no longer just survivors. They were a force capable of shaping reality, a species whose ingenuity could defy even the oldest and most powerful interstellar authority. But victory in the core was only the beginning. The Concordance, humiliated and desperate, would not yield easily. Humanity's next challenge would be to forge a new order in a galaxy still ruled by fear, suspicion, and ancient power, proving once and for all that the human spirit could not be erased, by fleets, plagues, or even time itself. The new order. The core of Luminaris had fallen, not through force of arms, but through ingenuity, audacity, and the relentless adaptability of humanity. Across the galaxy, the Concordance reeled. Fleets once thought unstoppable were immobilized or redirected. Colonies previously quarantined or erased blinked back into existence. And the curators, masters of reality itself, had learned the most dangerous lesson of all. Humans could not be predicted, controlled, or rewritten. Admiral Kayla Rios stood aboard Haven 9, the orbital station now transformed into the command center of a new human-led coalition. Around her, human and allied species representatives coordinated fleets, resources, and intelligence across the galaxy. The war was not over, but the tide had irrevocably turned. Humanity was no longer merely a species to be observed. They were a force shaping the galaxy's future. "We've proven one thing," Kayla said, addressing her council. "The universe does not bend to fear, or logic, or probability. It bends to those who act, who adapt, who refuse to submit." We are the authors of our own reality. And now, it is time to write the next chapter. Phase 1 of the New Order involved stabilizing the galaxy. Human engineers and scientists began repairing the temporal distortions left by the Concordance's timeline gambit. Colonies erased or destabilized were restored. Supply chains, once fractured by conflicting probabilities, were rebuilt. Entire star systems were liberated from bureaucratic oversight, their populations given the freedom to govern themselves. But Kayla knew stabilization alone was not enough. The Concordance was wounded, but it was not defeated. The curators, humiliated but resourceful, still wielded power beyond imagination. Humanity needed to create a structure strong enough to resist retaliation, a new galactic order that balanced freedom, responsibility, and mutual defense. This vision became the Coalition of Free Worlds, a council of species bound not by domination or fear, but by shared survival and mutual respect. Humanity led the coalition not as rulers, but as architects and protectors, demonstrating the principles that had carried them through fleets, plagues, and timelines: adaptability, ingenuity, and audacity. On the diplomatic front, emissaries traveled to every corner of the galaxy, offering treaties, trade, and alliances. The abyssal bloom, once a weapon of extinction, was repurposed as medicine, agricultural enhancement, and biotechnology across multiple worlds. Humanity's signature approach, turning threats into opportunities, became the standard by which the new order operated. The curators, confronted with humans' unprecedented achievements, could no longer manipulate or intimidate the coalition. Some accepted tentative alliances, recognizing that open hostility against humanity now meant self-destruction. Others retreated, their pride wounded, their ambitions curtailed. The galaxy, for the first time in millennia, had a species capable of shaping its destiny without domination. But the true testament to humanity's triumph lay not in politics or technology, but in spirit. Across countless worlds, humans, and their allies, celebrated survival and resilience. Stories of ingenuity against impossible odds became legends. Children learned not only the history of fleets and battles, but the philosophy that had guided a species through annihilation: adapt, improvise, innovate. Admiral Kayla looked out from Haven 9's observation dome, watching stars stretch across the void. The galaxy was vast, filled with civilizations old and new, each with their own ambitions. Yet humanity had carved a place not through conquest, but through defiance of the impossible, proving that intelligence, creativity, and courage could triumph over even the most absolute power. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. "The galaxy is no longer a place we endure. It is a canvas. And we are the painters." The human fleets, now unshackled from fear, patrolled trade routes, escorted colonies, and engaged in exploration missions beyond the edge of known space. They did not seek dominion, they sought discovery, security, and the opportunity to shape a future where no species could ever again be underestimated. Meanwhile, the remnants of the Concordance lingered like shadows in the background, a reminder that power unchecked could be dangerous, but humanity had learned that courage, ingenuity, and unity could match even the oldest, most powerful civilizations. Across the stars, a new order emerged, one not defined by fear or control, but by the capacity to adapt, to endure, and to turn every challenge into opportunity. Humanity had not merely survived, they had transcended expectation, proving that even in a universe governed by impossibility, audacity could carve a path to triumph. The new order was not a dominion, a conquest, or a declaration of supremacy. It was a promise that intelligent life, guided by creativity and courage, could shape its destiny. Humanity had survived fleets, plagues, and the rewriting of reality itself. Now, they would shape the galaxy, not as rulers, but as exemplars of what a species could achieve when it refused to surrender to fear. And in that triumph, one truth resonated across every star system, every timeline, every civilization. The human spirit could not be erased. It could only endure, and it would always prevail. The end.